is there a higher likelihood though of some order coming out of this chaos once you formalized it through marriage? Because someone might be now sitting and listening here, and there's a lot of chaos.
Sure.
And when you do formalize, is there a higher likelihood now that the chaos will then disappear and there will be some sort of order that comes in?
Where I think to your question, is marriage then still fashionable, if I may put it that way? It is within and of itself, because from a cultural perspective, there's a cultural drive to get married. And you're contemplating marriage, make haste slowly.
Okay.
Yeah, make haste slowly, meaning don't linger too long. But at the same time, be very thoughtful about the decision you are contemplating to make. Yeah, so there's a thinking portion, and there's another portion where, in case the relationship lingers too long, you find yourself doing certain things which are not conducive. So one of the things my wife and I had a relationship before we got married.
Yeah.
We never slept together. We made that commitment to say, Anyage Christians the logo, and we will do things right. See shut the right.
And you are in a relation 2 years. And you manage to abstain. That's almost like it's become a taboo topic. In fact, if Mautle Namachita is that on I'm in a relationship, how long have you been together for 3 months? 3 months and how is that even possible? That's impossible. Even you don't get discussions on abstinence, even on the pulpit these days. It's almost like, we're in 2025 now. It's accepted. Maybe if we're talking back in the day, we talk about traditional values, but we talk about modern values, and that's no longer something and I love the fact that you are bringing this up and that you've mentioned it, that this is what you did in your relationship. Sure. Maybe tell me, and let's speak to the people that are listening, was there a benefit derived from that?
If you truly love someone, I feel there's a level of respect that goes with it.
Right, welcome everybody to the Conversations. We're back at Itikama Uzweli. And today I've got someone that I really look up to, a leader, a thought leader, a preacher man, and a mentor to many young people who's joining us, Brother James Methuzela wa MJOLI. And boys, welcome to the show.
Thank you, my man.
Today we're going to be looking at something very, very interesting, and I want us to maybe standardize it before we go into the discussion. But we want to explore the tensions, if any, between traditional values and postmodern values through the theological lens, which is something I know you love reading the Bible, and you have a lot that you can share with us from a theological point of view. So I want us to look at that, those traditional values, and then we look at postmodern day culture and the way that we are doing things. But I would really like us to zoom in on marriage, things around marriage, and relationships as a whole. Please pray for us, Buddha.
Okay, let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about such a serious subject. And we ask for your guiding and, more importantly, for your Spirit to reign supreme. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And thanks for making the time out. I know you're a very, very busy guy. And you've made the time to come and join us. Please subscribe, Bafethu, click the like button, follow us. Then you can keep updated on the things that we do, the work that we are doing. And we hope that you're going to enjoy this discussion. You've got a young man who is looking to get married. Nomfowethu Lana, who has been married. How many years now?
15 years.
15 years. 15. This man has been married for 15. He might look young, but he's not children. He says, I might look small, but I am not children. Let's start off with marriage on its own. I mean, I don't know. We're sitting in 2025 now. What is your views? Do you think that people are still interested in this marriage thing? So not just focusing on Christians. I know you and I are Christians.
Yeah.
But just generally, do you think there's a decline? People are less interested, or are we seeing more people getting married? what's your feel on this thing?
Look, to be honest, from a relationship perspective, there's always a yearning. Yeah, whichever culture you go to.
Yeah.
I think human beings, in and of themselves, human beings are relational beings.
Yeah.
There's always a yearning to be with someone, whether or not one is a Christian or not. Well, the confines may be different.
Yeah.
Omunye prefer umshado, omunye prefer ukujola kuze kuyovalwa.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there's a yearning to be with someone. So the relationship aspect is there. Where I think, to your question, is marriage then still fashionable, if I may put it that way? It is within and of itself, because from a cultural perspective, there's a cultural drive to get married. Intombi ayikwazi ukuhlala intombi kuphela. Kumele ithole umyeni. And whether you go to the white culture, whether you go to any culture, marriage still forms part of society.
And do you not think that there's been an evolution in these cultural practices and approaches? Way back in the day, I think it would make sense, when we look at the older generation and we look back in the day, that there's always something. It's like a goal, I want to be with someone, and I hopefully one day want to get married. And those are the traditional values when we speak about them historically. But in the postmodern society, are we not seeing a new culture evolving? One that says that we can relate without necessarily having to get married.
Sure. That happens primarily when we seem to agitate one aspect above the other, or we seem to magnify one aspect above the other. So from the advent of the likes of feminism, for instance, from around 1844 onwards, you started seeing a glamorized version of self-worth, and people can, be complete on their own.
Yeah.
And there was also a drive where women prior to 1844 felt a need to be either driven by a man or be part of a relationship where men. There was a sense of a biblical foundation or cultural foundation which allowed men and women to be part together, and you almost felt incomplete when you were just on your own.
And is that eroding now?
Yeah, that's definitely eroding to a certain degree, and the influences around that have then forced the sort of family fabric to become incomplete as a whole.
And what are your thoughts on that erosion as a whole?
Okay, so my thoughts is it's led to things which have begun to creep in and become so the likes of like, for instance, if I have a companion, and I'm going through a hardship,
okay,
it's easier for me to sit down with you and say, hey, or to sit down with my wife and say, hey, baby, today it was really tough, and so on and so forth. But with the sort of things we are seeing now in the erosion of the family sort of circle, I struggle alone. And I go through issues alone.
Say with like abantu are struggling alone. Like, I mean, for me, I would think with nabangani. So you've got friends, and we're seeing that there's a lot of family trauma that many people are running away from, or family dynamics that people are running away from, and they are creating their own families through colleagues at work, through friends that they are meeting up with. And they find that it's more comforting, to then have discussions with those friends, or, this advent of the internet age and AI, which has now crept in. If I share with ChatGPT does not know me. In fact, hey, ChatGPT, I've had a rough day.
And it ends there.
And ChatGPT will respond there, make me feel good, sharp, go to bed, or go on to some anonymous website, speak to a stranger, where people, I might think, would know, but this thing is too risky, man. If the whole idea behind marriage is companionship or a support structure, there's various ways that I can get that support structure and companionship without necessarily, tying myself into this union, which may very well also backstab me at some point in time, because a lot of these things that are being shared as well through these marriages and these sessions of comfort and support are also being weaponized at a later stage. And now, Chigi, I thought, now we are going our separate ways and using my own things against me.
But they're not the same. I think they may do it, but they're ultimately not the same. I've had the liberty of going through ChatGPT sometimes you ask a question. I've actually tested that concept.
Yeah.
But in and of itself, although it provides that extra person who you can talk to, but ikhona lento yobuntu obungekho, the emotional connection.
Yeah.
I want to see it in your eyes when you tell me something. And I can have a friend, but companionship goes deeper, particularly when you talk about marriage.
Yeah.
Because if there's someone who knows you better than yourself, at certain times it's the partner you share your life with. And so marriage allows you to not only look at yourself in the mirror, but allow the mirror to talk back to you. And so whoever you share that life with is able to give you that extra view, particularly about yourself, and be honest about it, because you have the rest of your life to share with that person.
Yeah. And I want us to hold I'm gonna just put a thought here that I want us to hold, and that is, so Mina as a young man now who is seated here, and I'm looking, but I've got all these various options at my disposal. Is marriage really still fashionable? I want to hear from you, who's been married for 15 years, where you'd say to me, in fact, with all these options which might appear to be appealing to you or better options, I still say take the decision that I took 15 years ago. I want to hear from you why you'd still encourage me to do that. But Mhlambe, before we do that, I know you're a man of the word. Maybe let me start off by sharing this story of I had a guy, in fact, that invited me to a wedding. And, this guy doesn't believe in God. And he
believes in God, he doesn't believe.
He doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Maybe let me not say he doesn't believe, but he's not a religious guy.
Okay.
There's also these terms that they use nowadays, which is I'm spiritual, but I'm not. Not that he's even say that. But anyways, at his wedding, so I've become accustomed to those type of weddings where you've got a pastor from your church, you have some sort of relationship with them, you've probably gone through counseling with them as well, and then they officiate your wedding. They mean something to you, and then they come and officiate that wedding. Usually I don't even think they charge to be at those weddings. It's an honor for them to come and officiate, but it was a bit different with this gentleman here and his wife. They were there. The pastor came with the venue. Because they don't have any church that they belong to. They don't have any religious organization that they belong to. So when they hired the venue came with the pastor. And in fact, the pastor even charged them, penalized them for being late. Yabazmus, the ladies will always take their time to come to the aisle. That guy, the pastor came, and with a note there, the guy had to sign that, the bride is late and my time. Very, very strict.
Sure.
But it got me thinking. I'm like, and maybe let me just throw this in as well. This is a couple that already had children. I think they had like 4 or 5 kids already. And they'd been living together forever, for a very, very long time. Sure. So cohabiting for a very, very long time, maybe, which is something that we can also touch on. But then they decide now, later on in their lives, that they're going to get married. They're not really believers in the streets. And I'm wondering why. Why would someone want to get married? What are they looking to get in that marriage? Sorry, now you have to answer for them. But what are they looking to get in marriage that they didn't already have? With all these 5 kids that they've already had living together for all these years.
So I mean, in the context, it could be the pressure of having, number one, kids and shatile. You're gonna have kids growing up in an environment where father and mother are not necessarily married. But tatis bons as an example, and it becomes a complex issue. The other one is the societal pressures around, you've been staying for a long time, or they need to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. And so marriage becomes obviously a sort of the only solution for them to put shape and order into their already existing chaos. They've been staying together. They've been staying together for 5 years. Noguzalenti be formalized so that they can become acceptable to society. Then they decide to go married. And it's very fortunate, by the way. Yeah. The mere fact that they've been dating for 5 years or cohabiting for 5 years and have children, yet not married, and still be together. Because statistics would tell you almost 90% of people who have children outside of marriage don't end up getting married. So it's a very tough environment, because marriage allows you, I think going at it the right direction allows you, no matter kwenzakalani post you having children whatsoever. But because you've made a commitment to be with each other, then it gives you the comfort with noma kanjani, but the discipline of with yazi ngizohlala. But in this case, I mean, there could be a number of reasons. So one is ndoda senza njani. We need to do something about our lives, or the pressures around family, or the pressures around society, and so they needed to find some form of.
Is there a higher likelihood though of some order coming out of this chaos once you formalized it through marriage? Because someone might be now sitting and listening here, and there's a lot of chaos. And is the message to this person that's listening now is that, the reason why there's so much chaos in your relationship, where there's this child now that you are despising, and why he's constantly maybe cheating on you and whatnot, is because you have not yet formalized.
Sure.
And when you do formalize, is there a higher likelihood now that the chaos will then disappear and there'll be some sort of order that comes in?
Yeah, I think for me, it also goes with a level of self-respect. I think I'm going to start with a pointing question. Melos Buzuguti, if you were to sit outside of your situation, would you be pleased with what you are doing? From a discipline point of view, do you have the self-respect or not? My father, for instance, used to say to me, when I'm from MJOLI, ungalinge uyoshayela umntana abantu iflate ungaphandle.
Okay.
You know, uyotshontsha umntana abantu kibo engaqoshwanga endlini. So have the decency to go knock at the door, get into the house, and it allows you the opportunity to see who she is in a normal environment. Umbone pheka, umbone clean, umbone yenzeni, so you don't get surprised when you decide to make her a wife. But the other thing it taught me is the decency and the respect, and for you to bring out that child outside of her family orientation or family environment, there needs to be necessary steps that show what you prize Lomtana Bantu, and you are moving her into a different environment. So, and culturally, or even from a Christian perspective, it allows you to have some dignity around this thing. So if you are settling in or cohabiting with this person for the past couple of years, what are you saying?
In fact, earlier on when we were talking about, and I love this angle of self-respect, I was actually thinking when you mentioned earlier on to say that it's a blessing for them that they now choose to come together and marry, and it will help abantwana as well. In my brothers, like Amargafana was like, I remember when we used to sit in school, 98% of the class did not come from a nuclear family. And, those that came from a nuclear family, we knew them by Amakama, staying in the same place, Uzandi, what I'm saying? The rest of us, like, that's already the society.
Sure.
But I'm thinking that the fact that society is messed up does not mean that we need to continue with that.
Sure.
Because society is unhealthy, doesn't mean that we must now be comfortable in that unhealthy state. Yeah. And if you can, then let's do things the right way.
The right way.
So take us through here from the Bible. This whole marriage thing from a biblical perspective. Is it a respecter of the effluxion of time? Whatever happened, and maybe take us through from what God intended, how marriage came about, and what God intended for it, and what didn't just take that thought through. Does it then efflux with time, where we say what God intended back then may not necessarily apply now, because then it is culture and timeline dependent, and
Sure.
does it change? Does it remain the same?
Okay, maybe we can start with a foundational principle that we serve a God that does not change. So first and foremost, God is not someone who changes his mind tomorrow. Around certain issues of principle. So if he lays down a principle, that principle remains forever. We may decide to change over time, but God still remains the same. So foundationally, because God, in fact, whenever we think about God, we always think about him in his singular format. But there's a reason why we look at him as a triune God, or a Trinity. That Trinity in its very nature tells you that there's a family in heaven. And so when God instituted a family on earth, it basically was a mirror of what existed in heaven, so that even as we exist here, we may appreciate what godliness means, or what it means, and therefore you can't love in isolation. There needs to be someone else to portray that love, because Mautio Yatanda, you're receiving something from someone who loves you, and so you can't say you are loving one. It does not make sense. And
I don't know whether the way it's like it's personal. This thing you can't say.
And so God then brings down this concept of marriage, where he introduces perfect beings by creation. Adam in his loneliness, then Eve is brought into the picture. And God already assigns them in order to make this thing a success. You shall be the helpmeet of this one. And so they come together in union, and from what we can read in the scriptures, everything was okay until the tempter came. And here we start to see a fragmentation of what God had made perfectly. So from a marriage setup where even Adam were perfect and everything was good, serving a God, which is foundational, by the way. Both Adam and Eve, at the center of everything they did, God was at the center. And so from there, the fragmentation then happens, sin comes into being, and sin comes in and knocks at the door by means of separation. And it's what we were talking about earlier, where society now teaches us that this whole individualism issue, which is not bad, by the way, but somehow that if you tend to prioritize it more than the balance of the unity in the family, then it becomes a problem. It's one of those dangers you never want to have in your family. So anyway, so Eve separates from Adam. That's point number one. The problem begins there. And in their separation, then sin comes in and erodes the sort of family concept. Then we start seeing certain things begin to happen as you study the Bible. And God now needs to introduce remedial actions to then protect what he calls what he had created and made perfect. So for instance, some very interesting concepts you find in the Bible. One, again, trying to protect this whole concept is, and I'm going to display it with a story that happened in my family. I won't say who, but I know my father was responsible for that. So my sister had a child outside of wedlock. And obviously, we've been taught not to and not have a child outside of wedlock. So bafika abafowethu nabakhongi bathi bazohlawula umntana. My father asked a very important question: are you going to marry her? And there was a bit of doubt in the guy's mind and the family that came through. And his response was, if that is not going to happen, then you don't need to pay anything, because both of you were alive and when you made the decision to do whatever. So you can go back with your money. I will raise the child as my own. And here is the reason why. Because in his mind, that child must grow up knowing a father and a mother, and not necessarily a mother alone or whatever. His main view about the child growing up would, in my cooler, in some form of a fragmentation when it comes to a family orientation. Whenever she grows up, she must see a mother and a father. And when she sees my father and she's my mother, she sees a mother and a father. Even though my sister is there. And by the way, what I'm talking about is a biblical principle. Mayingashadile umuntu in the Bible, kodwa nomntwana. That child, if the guy who's impregnated the lady does not want to marry her, in the Bible, that child becomes the child of ubaba no mama. So that the child, noma khula nakanjani, does not have a fragmented view of what a family is all about.
So, but let me just understand something here. Ne? So the intention is to avoid the child having that fragmented view. But it does not then substitute umkhulu for ubabaka. So does the Bible then prohibit umntana from having access to ubaba wakhe, the original father, and his side of the family? Because and I ask that because I want to understand what the intention was. Is the intention to preserve the child's outlook on what a family should look like?
Sure.
Or is it also intended to then punish the father to say, if you want to have this child associate with you and your side of the family, then you can only do so under circumstances whereby you have married our daughter? Because we see that, where umntana now grows up and does not know the father, does not know the father's side of the family. And you ask them why. Nesbong, it doesn't even carry their surname. Say, no, our culture is that. So I've always thought it's like a cultural thing that is aimed at punishing the father. But it seems like now, even in the Bible, this thing is there, but the intention is to avoid this fragmented view. What do you then say?
So the issue for me is not an act of punishment, but is to bring order within the chaos. So if you are not willing to marry her, that means you were responsible enough to bear a child, but you're not responsible to raise her as a daughter within a balanced environment. And again, God's view on it, based on my lens, is that He wanted to protect or to is giving the child the opportunity to go in an environment that's fairly balanced. I never want to grow up. His view is almost like angifuna umntwana mayithi ufuna ukukhalela ubaba and ubaba is unreachable. Umayikhalela umama, the mother is unreachable. But both of them are present and they can see the family union being present there. So, and the Bible is not saying the father must not be the father. That's not the intention. The intention is, are you responsible enough to take accountability? If you're not able to take accountability, then fine. There is another way,
Wait, but what would you say to someone here now who is, again, listening, and they're saying that, look, Minano Ntabi is saying it was never going to work. She's psycho. We had our moment, Begumnandi, now little Teboho has been born. But I love Teboho with all my heart. I want to be responsible for Teboho, but my responsibility towards Teboho cannot be dictated by a matrimonial union between myself and Tabiseng. Can we still allow Ubafo to get access to Teboho? And in fact, maybe let me take it a step further. Say that Untabiseng comes from a family where there's just a father. Ntabiseng's mom has unfortunately passed away. But the baby daddy still has both his parents alive. And they have a very, very balanced family. Can we then, is it acceptable to then have umntwana go and stay primarily with baby daddy's parents and have that balanced environment and then allow Ntabiseng access? Because now the child grows up seeing mommy and daddy, but from baby daddy's side of the family.
Okay, very interesting. You're nervous. If I pantyhose. Okay, we're going to try and stay within the confines of a principle approach. So we're going to try and be very contentious around our response, but it's important to understand the both sides. So it's what we call the worldview and a biblical view of how things, a biblical worldview, and we need to have a departure point. The departure point is, what are we protecting? Am I protecting my desire? Your thando, angimthandi lo, is psycho. When you first met her, was she not a psycho? Manje umntwana ngoba sekakhona seka-psycho. And now that there's a baby involved, what are we saying? And I think the most important thing is sometimes our feelings, our own selfish desires, nenkanuko, sometimes cloud our view on what's important. Now that there is a child, we must think about the child. It's the unfortunate thing in our own selfish pride, and people can argue, "Patangimthandi, yes, awumthandi, yes," but you should have thought about that before this thing began. And I'm coming from a principled position, and I might sound not sympathetic, but we are addressing the issue of principle. And unfortunately, then there are those cases where we talk about, okay, ngoba ke seka khona, and the Bible is very clear what separation means. And kubhlungu again, because we can only separate due to adultery and so on and so forth. But other than that, the Bible feels like relationships can always be workable somewhat.
Yeah.
There's can always be intervention to sort out things. But again, you could have seen that prior. So there are cases where 90% of the cases, there's absolutely no excuse for you to
not get married.
Yeah, unless you wazange ucabange. Thina sifuna ukucabanga sekukhona umntwana kanti you should have thought umntwana angakabi khona.
Yeah.
So first, we need to deal with that principle. So from a biblical worldview, the family circle is always protected, even if and it helps us to establish that we always need to manage these relationships.
Yeah.
Namhlanje singacabana, but alingasho nilanga man. Find ways of handling issues and finding workable solutions to coexist kahle.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the what we are seeing in the world today is that we've become very soft on the issues of solving problems together. Yeah. Thina manje sekuyimpi nje for forever, and that's not, the Bible does not promote that. For the mere fact that we need to try and solve issues, and that's the beauty of marriage. I mean, I've been married for 15 years. I can tell you, we argue with whatever, but the beauty of marriage is you are able to mend these arguments or this solving, and you move on again. And
there's a song by Utamia still. Also, there's a line like, what is sadder than an argument is the thought that we may never have been.
Oh,
so it's better that we argue here knowing that we're together. Imagine the thought of never having been together and we're not even having the luxury of that argument. But see, maybe just to take it a step back, because what I'm getting from you when you shared the biblical principle, I'm seeing a God who is saying that there's a child here who needs to have a positive outlook on life. And we must create an environment for the child. Mm-hmm. So let not the child be affected. So the ideal situation would have been let both parents be married and let the child be exposed to that. If the parents, through their selfishness or differences, decides that they're not going to get married, let not the child then suffer because of that. Mm-hmm. So because you guys have decided that you're not going to get married, here's what God then brings in as a contingency plan. Mm-hmm. Put that child in an environment where they'll still have a positive outlook on impilo.
Yes.
But where that environment is, I tell me if you think that I'm wrong, but it does not necessarily have to be on the maternal side of the family. It could even be on the paternal side.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we must then ensure that the child's best interests are of paramount importance. Mm-hmm. Because any other school of thought, I fear that then results in the child being used as a pawn of some sort, in these fights between the parents, where someone will then come and say, no, because of the Bible says that they must stay. You might even find, some people will read the Bible and you realize, sister, they have to know. The Bible says umntana must stay with my family.
Yeah.
But my sister, you're an orphan. You don't have a... Yeah, but Oksala, so I'm the family. Yeah. So whether you can't get access... And then we move away from... But what was the intention? And then we move away from, the child's best interest. Because the truth of the matter is, and I appreciate the ideal that you're sharing, and that's what every one of us must strive for. And I hope with everyone that is listening here that we cannot take relationships at face value and just treat them as any other thing. We talk about people's hearts here, especially when there's children involved. Then it even gets worse. But at the same time, we're not oblivious to the fact that this postmodern world, there's now a different way of doing things.
Yeah.
Whether or not that way is right or wrong, we can have a debate on it. And you and I will probably then agree that, this movement towards these biblical principles is definitely wrong, but it's there. And the question is then, what do we now do when it's there? We cannot, on the one hand, move away from the biblical principle. Then when we've moved away from the biblical principle, we utilize the same biblical principles to now weaponize, or we weaponize it and start using umntwana as a pawn in this thing. Because there has been that culture of change. We're seeing there's a lot of migration. People are living in the cities. Commitment is now lacking. Abantwana are being born from one-night stands. Children are being born from relationships where you don't even know. We use pseudonyms in these relationships. Who's the father of the child? Slayer 321 underscore 73. Who the hell is that? No,
Thinking in.
Yeah, and that's the world that we're living in, where we don't encourage that, and we should move away from that. But if you do find yourself in that situation, I would think, and I also want to hear your views on it, that let the child's best interest be then paramount.
Sure.
Even if it means if you both don't have parents in your respective families, do we have about auntie and uncles who are maintaining nuclear households? Are they church people? Are they church folks? Are they friends and family that you can then expose this child to? But don't let the child go through the same sufferings that you've gone through.
True. And I guess that's when I started. We talked about a principle. So we uphold that principle. And like you were saying, I mean, if the other family seems to be a good environment for the child to be raised, then let's move towards that. I hate using the word normal, but there's an environment that's conducive. Yeah. And I guess that's a very important principle to hold. So especially when there's a child involved, think about that and think about it. Cool. And I often think one of the things we fail to understand is that relationships is really discipline. Okay, there's an author who says a phrase I never forget.
Yeah.
She says, when it comes to relationships and you're contemplating marriage, make haste slowly.
Okay.
Yeah, make haste slowly, meaning don't linger too long. But at the same time, be very thoughtful about the decision you are contemplating to make. Yeah. So there's a thinking portion, and there's another portion where, in case the relationship lingers too long, you find yourself doing certain things which are not conducive. So one of the things my wife and I had a relationship before we got married.
Yeah.
We never slept together.
Yeah.
Made that commitment to say Anyege Christian is the logo, and we will do things right, right, because we wanted to preserve what we have and enjoy the beauty of marriage without a historical basis that we could potentially harm what we want to have. And so we had this relationship under the principle that I make haste slowly. We then had a courtship for around 2 years, and eventually after that we decided to get married.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I had known her as a person for a good 10 years. Not as someone I had thought about dating, but, within a circle of friends, we had mingled, we had known each other. She would visit this side, and then eventually when it came to actually starting to court someone, she became someone I really thought, And I studied her family, went to her, sat down together. We would go to parks, read, try to engage, trying to know what type of person she was. And it gave rise to have a fundamental decision with us in because I had then known her. So this make haste slowly. A time limit, not to say, and I can see the dangers of having a very long relationship.
Yeah.
I've seen it with family members, I've seen it with friends and so on. But also, it's not only about time, it's also about thinking or studying the other person. And that then allows you to, no matter what then happens, even if I do have a child with this person, but it's someone I'm willing to spend the rest of my life with.
But you touch on something very important that everyone seems to be shying away from having that discussion these days: abstinence. In a relationship. And you are in a relationship 2 years. And you manage to abstain. That's almost like it's become a taboo topic. In fact, if Maushle Namachita and you start to I'm in a relationship, how long have it together for 3 months? 3 months and how is that even possible? That's impossible. Even you don't get discussions on abstinence, even on the pulpit these days. It's almost like, we're in 2025 now. It's accepted. Maybe if we're talking back in the day, we talk about traditional values, but we talk about modern values, and that's no longer something and I love the fact that you are bringing this up and that you've mentioned it, that this is what you did in your relationship. Sure. Maybe tell me, and let's speak to the people that are listening. Was there a benefit derived from that?
Yeah, if you truly love someone, I feel there's a level of respect that goes with it.
Yeah.
You know, I want to treasure it. It's my treasure. I'll do everything I can to treasure it. And I guess the beauty of waiting is that it becomes sweeter when it comes at the right time. And ukungalindi kwethu kumosha into eziningi. Because we have ideologies about certain things. We have sometimes it becomes over and above the other relationship. I'll tell you with things which are normal. I mean, we are talking as friends here. You see it all the time. Uzwa abantu bathi uyithenga kanjani imoto ungakayi-test drive.
Those are the things.
And we're not talking about inanimate things here. We're talking about human beings. Umuntu odala uNkulunkulu ngomfanekiso wakhe is because he knew the dangers of, he foresaw. God foresaw the dangers of having to enjoy the benefits of things that were saved for a later stage. And because you then if you make this paramount, and when you enjoy something outside of its designated time, it loses its value once it gets to the right time. And there often seems to be a lack of prioritization, particularly on the love aspect. Wazana. You know, when you're courting, it's time to know each other. And by the way, because of the whole courtship aspect, the same author then says it's better to break an engagement than to break a marriage vow. You could be at the very doorsteps before a pastor and would you take it? And if you still say no, that courtship has become a success. Because you would have realized right there and there, she's not the right person for me. But because we then utilize other benefits as a prescript or a foundation for me to make a choice about whether I'm marrying this person or not, then over time, it loses value because I told you, I told her then, or I saw then the whole marriage concept is broken.
What do you think, Ungulukulu, so based off your experience, when God encouraged abstinence and discouraged premarital sex, and now that when you are in it and you are now married and you're enjoying the benefits within marriage, have you ever had a thought, I'm sure that this is what God had in mind when he was discouraging premarital sex, because there's now this benefit, and I want you to sell this thing. Like, please, man, and we need to, because there is so many young people that don't get to have these type of conversations, and someone is listening today. They're still pure, they're virgin, they're sitting there somewhere. There's so much pressure externally from abangani, and the hormones also just kicking in, and they think, you know what, what do you think God is trying to save them from, from an enjoyment point of view? That you would say, Buffett, hold on a little longer.
For me, first and foremost, there's a danger in, I think, one thing in his wisdom, he's allowed us to use words which discredit certain things. For instance, we use abstinence. The Bible uses purity.
Purity is the word.
Purity. And the purity aspects then glorifies lentole. Mangiti abstinence, it almost seems as if content is ninja.
And but the purity in front, now I feel like
it's a quest
I'm dating myself. Like, if I mess this thing up, and
mangiti purity, it's a quest for holiness. It's a quest for purity. It's a quest for righteousness. And what better word to use than someone every day. And by the way, it's not something that's immune to Christianity only, but even in the cultural aspect, in Tombi, as Oboniswe Nkosi in the Swazi culture, as an example, kulethwa intombi into kuphela, or virgins come.
Yeah.
If you want to marry the king, you must be a virgin. That thing used to be prized. But now, with the advent of these words, then abstinence, wrong.
No, you've hit it on the nail.
So the purity aspect. So the quest is, I've Paul, I've run the race.
Yeah,
it's been tough. I've been tempted on either side, but now that I've finished the race, let me enjoy the benefits. Enjoy a bad conscience.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful deed, and it's an amazing thing to be a part of.
That purity, that thing is like sitting. Yeah. When you say purity, I'm picturing myself in a brand new white sneaker.
Yeah,
and now I need to go and step outside. And I'm worried, I don't want dirt on it.
Yes.
And it's always been known that whatever is brown and muddy outside is dirt.
Yeah.
And that's what would maybe call your traditional values. Then you come in 2025 where people take that dirt and then they make art out of it and then they parade it on Instagram and then they make dirt look good.
Yeah.
And now suddenly I'm more confident, or I don't have any issue with stepping out with my sneaker. But you're dirting the thing. If you can keep that thing clean, and there's a way of walking out there and preserving it clean, and God has determined what that way is, then why not stick to that?
It's true. So to glorify Udaga, the society is taught us to glorify mud or ugnola.
But we don't speak about these things a bit. I feel like as a machita, and with these younger ones as well, we need to start with it. When you're speaking about a courtship and there's I'm not sure if this is just my own personal view, but I think like when you say that a courtship that results in a non-marriage is a successful one, we see a lot of societal pressure or just getting married for the vibes, because now people are getting married for the wedding, for the dresses, for the suits and whatnot, and then also for the sexual intercourse. Because now we're living in these families, our hormones are kicking. I want to have that sex with you. Chigi chigi gyashat. Then people attempt to court, or they begin to court during the marriage itself, which is a danger. Because now you are learning your person during the marriage, and then you pick up all these red flags, which are now evident. They were always there, but you ignore them, and then it results in a divorce. So there's this reverse of that now, where people are wanting to court in marriage. They're driven by hormones. They're driven by these postmodern societal standards and whatnot, which in and of itself is also a problem. But we need to have these discussions. We need to have these discussions as a machita, have these discussions with the youngsters that are coming up. There is like a huge gap between us. And I'm listening to somebody that says, in fact, this thing is possible. And I think I can also hear you saying that you need to get married now.
You need to.
But then let's also touch on marriage itself. I was looking at some stats, before pre this democratic dispensation. So I want just to zoom into South Africa. Pre-democracy, we didn't really have accurate divorce stats because they were only recording the whites and the others, and the blacks were excluded, who is the majority. Post-94, we then get records now, that also incorporate black marriages and whatnot. I realized that there is a higher number of divorces, and maybe that trend is now beginning to change, and we're also going into it as blacks. But there's a higher rate of divorce amongst our white counterparts, our white brothers and our white sisters. They tend to be divorcing at a higher rate than we black people. And one of the reasons, if you look at it, is that it touches on culture. Says we have different cultures. It touches on finance, and it says that our financial pockets are also different. The white people having been disadvantaged and remaining advantaged, having been advantaged and remaining advantaged, have access to institutions such as courts. They have access to those monies, and then they have cultures as well where the family unit is not as communal and incorporating the spirits of Ubuntu as we have. In our societies, we find more of mediation, uncles and aunties playing roles. Just because you've had some differences does not mean that you must now divorce or go into separation. What are your views on that? And do you think that still exists? And is there a risk, as we currently see it, that with the upliftment of the Black nation in the economic participation, etc., that we might also find our divorce rates now increasing, and then we move away from these family structures and communal, that we might find ourselves falling into the same trap?
Yeah, maybe I'll start from the end of that point. And it's true. I was listening to Mbuso Khoza in a discussion with McG on issues of culture. So I think McG asked him a question around what could have possibly changed the history of South Africa for the better.
Yeah.
And he says something very interesting. He says, what was the defining historical moment that could have changed South Africa for the better, particularly for Black people? He says, 1994, when 1994 happened, what should have happened is that heads of families should have been called together and formal discussions around. Because that's what we are used to in the cultural sense. But instead, the new democratic realm introduced concepts which were foreign to our culture. Now jobs were afforded to women, and women could work in what, and there could be career aspirations around women and so on and so forth, and women empowerment and all those other things. And that sort of hijacked the historical, cultural aspect around what marriage in the cultural sense was. And that's part one of the things that started to creep in, particularly in the Black culture, which influenced our culture. And now we're seemingly heading towards what we are talking about. I can go and sue someone now. I can write a divorce letter now, or whatever the case may be. I can approach a lawyer. I want to divorce. And that never used to happen in the Black culture. It's a foreign thing. It's just not something we are primarily used to. Okay, so in and of itself, you find that the cultural aspect becomes weaned over time. And unfortunately, Nati says Ifunda, and it starts to creep in within the sort of the Black environment. But in Tengaisho, based on how you started the conversation, is that our culture in and of itself, because of what we've gone through as Black people, is number one, you have umuntu ngabantu. So the appreciation of the other person, and primarily being relational. When I marry into a family. I'm not wearing umetusela kuphela. I'm not marrying James Well, but I'm part of a family. That's why mawushadwa, before uzoshada uyafundiswa la ekhaya ukuthi kuphekwa kanjani. Njengoba uzoshada umntanami, but this is the food he likes. This is how you prepare it. This is what you get involved. There's a whole members, or the families are put together. There's a whole relationship aspect which binds the two families together, and also binds you not only to yourself but to the rest. And you become not only accountable to your man, you become accountable to the society. And the thing about culture in the Black sense is that your name would then be carried by those who come after you. And so it's not only about yourself only, but it's about the future generations. And so marriage became a very important commodity, particularly in the Black culture and society, Black societies. The other aspect around us is the issue of resilience. Phrases like tintabafazo, titimbogoto, and the mere fact that we've gone through tough times. Singabantu isinto khula kwethu akufani nokukhula kwabelungu. But primarily we have learned to survive, even in the hardest of times. Ukusuka ekhaya, ugibela itaxi, or walk distances to get to school without any issues. And those very experiences is some things you carry even in your relationship aspect. And we are funda ubegezela. Uzwe isisho sithi, for instance, mawuqabene endlini, or you had an argument at home, you go to your mother's place. Your mother would always say a phrase like, mntanami, emshadweni kuyabegezela. You see, so it's not easy to separate in the Black culture. Umlungu uyafika lapha, He did what to you?
Let's go to the police. Let's go to the lawyer.
just leave him. He's not good for you, my darling. Just leave him. Yeah. But in the black culture,
but there's something, but there's a lot that I would have loved for us to canvas and explore. But unfortunately, we don't have enough time. Because this whole thing of also separation, I would have loved us to go into the book of Judges. And then the concubine that left, is it 19 that left, and what happened? But maybe one day. I want us to close off on being single. There's a lot of emphasis on that nowadays. And I want us to touch on that and just, I want to get your views on it, whether that is a hindrance or an impediment of some sort or a deterrence to people wanting to get married. Are we now getting more and more comfortable in singleness? There's a book I was reading here also about being single and alone. But maybe before we do that's going to be where we close it up with. Is there anything else, Wena, that you would want to zoom in on that is burning in your heart that you want us to quickly discuss before we get on to this singleness thing?
Yeah, maybe just before we get to the singleness thing, there's a preacher I love, youngish, but he's quite oldish now.
Yeah,
his name is David Ashrick. He once preached a sermon. Tells a story that there was this pastor who was married to his wife. Comes back home late from an elders meeting, with the local church meeting, and finds the deacon with the wife in bed upstairs. Then he's obviously tested. He says, okay, please put your clothes on, wife and Mr. Man. Let's go downstairs. They get downstairs, trying to understand what happened. And then after that, they pray. And he says, please don't do it again. Forgives them and goes. A month later, comes back again from a workers' meeting, gets home. When he gets upstairs, same deacon again, in bed with the wife. Again, does the same thing, walks downstairs, now with more vigor. Obviously, guys, we need to stop this. Does not take the matter to church, and then prays. Then, because pastors move around quite often, they had to move to a different district in the States. So they move into that district, gets home late again from another meeting from church. When he gets home, same elder now moved all the way from that district to this district to be with the wife. And finds them again, tries to, mediate and so on and so forth, tells them not to do it. Eventually, the wife divorces the pastor. And he asks a fundamental question. Is divorce an option? The pastor remained.
It's like the story of Kaka. I was trending and said that the wife divorced him because he's a good man.
Yeah.
It's too much of a good man.
Yeah. And that man remained, And sometimes, some of the reasons why we separate, are they registered in heaven as good enough reasons why we need to separate with our wives? Yeah. I mean, think about it.
Pastor's name Jesus by any chance. That takes a lot.
It takes a lot. And I'm bringing this up because in as much as if marriage is sometimes fashionable, it is a very important decision you have to make. And one is to make it with, both your eyes open and your ears open, and a good amount of prayer, because you are entering into a domain where the devil is not also pleased about. He'll try by all means to destroy any sort of family environment or conducive environment that rests. So divorce is one of his major weapons, which is trying to infiltrate, particularly in the church. Yeah.
And I do want to say that James and I, we share the same favorite author that he's been quoting in passing. So her name is Ellen G. White. If you've never heard of her, phenomenal author. Her writings are out there. You'll learn a lot, bring you closer to the Bible and to the Word of God. There's something else that, she mentions in one of the books that she writes, and I believe she was inspired when she wrote this. I am paraphrasing, but it's something along the lines of our family units are little heavens on earth. And you mentioned it earlier on when you were speaking about the Godhead and, that being a reflection through our family units. And if the devil can damage our family units, then our communities are damaged. Our churches are damaged. You cannot have a united parliament when our families are divided. So some of the challenges that we are facing, that we're exposed to in our workplaces, in our political environments, in our business environments, and whatever, in our societal interactions, most of those challenges are a reflection of the attacks that have been leveled against the families. Because when a family unit is solid and it's strong, and it is that mini heaven, that will translate itself in a very amazing snowball effect into other various aspects of our lives. And I think that we must strive to fight for what is right. And when I say fight, and I mean, that spiritual fight, because I think this is a spiritual war. And we've got God. God is with us. And as young people, we coming to here as 230 Conversations, let's do things right. These principles are meant to safeguard and to protect us, not only us, but our communities, our families, our churches. And it starts with you and it starts with me. Let's do the right thing. Let's give ourselves over to the Lord and allow him to lead. Because Satan has created the impression that it's impossible, man.
Yeah.
Not in 2025. These things that James is telling you about sounds like a Netflix show. James said 2 years did not engage with my wife. We have differences and we sort them out without having to pay monies to lawyers and whatsoever. What are you talking about? It is possible.
Sure.
And we certainly can live those righteous lives, as empowered by the Spirit of God, of course. Let's go through singleness. Maybe we'll conclude with it. It would be nice to have you back, man.
Yeah, as well.
Because there's so much that we can explore on these matters. But singleness, I'm comfortable, man. Why?
Yeah.
Why do I need that? I mean, some will even say to you, why do I need a man? I mean, I'm comfortable. There's vibrators. There's masturbation. And these are true things. These are what young people are going through. Why do I need to bring stress into my environment? This thing is working for me. I don't have to share my resources with anybody. Is that also contributing to young people? Because maybe I think there is an increase in young people that are viewing marriage negatively. Some because of the experiences that they've had through their parents or seeing these things not working or not coming from those type of households. Some just look at it as about, what could I possibly benefit from it that I can't just benefit now outside of it?
Sure. Yeah, I think we often confuse marriage as a prerequisite, I don't know of what. But ultimately, marriage is a choice. I can choose to be married. I can choose not to be married. But I think my biggest battle with this whole singleness issue is that we can grow up from the ages of 0 to 15, 16, and not think about this whole singleness thing. I don't know why, when it gets to a particular age, and now we need to compactalize it and then make it a special issue.
And enjoy all of this. Hearts have been broken.
and then separate a certain part of who you are.
Yeah.
And then package it under a title with the singleness. Yeah. And these things of titling stuff have their own impact on you psychologically. Because
abstinence, this thing
So mang is biza umuntu singing. You were singing Lusazala, so it's not an issue. The issue is, are you making the right choices about your life? Period. Whether I want to choose to get married or I choose not to get married, you still remain a complete being as how God created you to be. But we're not saying we are removed from the challenges of single people in here. One of the things we need to consider, and the Bible makes it very clear, we live in strange times.
Very strange.
Yeah, 2 Timothy chapter 3 calls it perilous times will come. So Daniel chapter 12 says times that have never been ever since the beginning of the world. So whatever existed 10 years ago, it's almost like 10 times the experience. You open Facebook, you see certain things. You open Instagram, there's challenges. The world is imprinting its own ideologies on us and giving us a reasons to think in a particular form or shape or whatever the case may be. And this has then made the whole issue of being single a very hard thing to. For instance, we talk Paul. Paul says, if you want to work for the Lord, I advise you to remain single. Not really single. He doesn't singleize. He just zones in on the issue of a choice.
Okay.
Yeah, I would advise you not to get married. So, you choose to get married or choose not to get married. It does not change your state. Just because you choose not to get married, you're still as valuable as you have always been. Whether you're married or not, you are valuable to God and you're valuable to society. But you never think of yourself with you become 10 times more valuable because you are married. We become better individuals, whether we are married or not. But marriage has helped me to become a better individual. I've learned how to deal with people much better, and it's helped me to lead better in other aspects of my life, and whether it's work or church or whatever the case may be. Okay, so there's a concept in business that we often do whenever we have meetings or we've delivered a task. There's always what we call a debrief. And this is something I'd always advise people, particularly single people who've been hurt. We have all gone through. I myself was hurt in a relationship. But as soon as
we'll talk about it another time.
So one of the things you need to do, examine yourselves. Sit down with yourself. Put yourself on a 2-hour exam. Why did this particular thing fail? Study the things I ignored and the things and learn from it. And when you learn from it, you'll begin to discover whether or not I may have rushed in certain decisions I made, or I ignored certain warning signs, and therefore that gave rise to hurt. But it does not mean marriage or relationships in and of themselves are bad things. God created them for a reason. And they are holy. Marriage is holy, and being in a relationship is a good thing. But in my singleness, and like I said, marriage is a choice. Therefore, in your singlehood, work on cultivating a character fit for heaven, or a character worthy of praise in the environment that you will sit in or in society. And I think if there's anything I could say, you are worthy. You are still valuable, even in your singleness. And I hate talking about this concept. So now you enter into singleness. You outside.
The realm of singleness.
But you're complete as you are, and you've always been complete.
Voice, thank you so much.
Thank you
for taking your time to come and share these beautiful words of wisdom. Marriage, the principles associated therewith, whether we speak traditional values or we are speaking postmodern values, some things just transcend through time. They are not limited. They are still equally applicable as they were back then and till today. God has good intentions. God has good desires for us. And He put these things in place for yours and my benefit. So let's take time, contemplate on these things. I know there's more that we could have shared. We may even have, you maybe could have packaged it in a better way. But, our intention is to get this type of conversations out. Take us back to our first love. Take us back to what God's desires and will is, for His beings that He has created, being you and I. So I hope that we've learned something from this, that we're blessed by this, and we look forward to seeing you. So please remember to drop a like, check out James on his social media as well. Listen to the music that he sings. He's an amazing musician, by the way. From us to 30 Conversations, till we meet again, it's a lot of love, and may God bless you.